The heavyweight division is a mess. Just take a look at that top 15. What's the explanation for it being so weak? I think especially for Americans, the explanation is pretty simple. There's just other sports that the best athletes turn to. The big guys who are freak athletes do other things. They want to be LeBron, Josh Allen, and Myles Garrett. People call this argument cope when Americans use it as an explanation as to why there are not any male American UFC champions right now. But go across America and everywhere you will see kids at football practice, basketball and baseball practices, and other athletics like wrestling and track and field. How often is there going to be a kid training MMA? And even if it is a combat sport, it'll most likely be boxing. Most parents won't want their kids to head in that direction anyways. This is just a perception thing because the same parents that will have no problem putting their kid in football with all the CTE risk it presents will prevent their kid from engaging in combat sports. So I don't think it's cope when people say that the best American athletes just choose to go a different route. Take for example Jon Jones, in many people's eyes the greatest MMA fighter ever. There was a very great chance that he just wouldn't have even started training MMA. His brothers both went on to play in the NFL and he gave it a shot too, but he just wasn't very good at the sport. So imagine if he was just good enough to get a scholarship and get drafted into the NFL, even if it was a late selection. He never would have become an MMA fighter and we wouldn't have known Jon Jones the way we do today. So I wonder, how many potential great fighters did we miss out on? How would guys like J.J. Watt, Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, and Ray Lewis have done in MMA if they would have just started at, and I wouldn't even go too early, but what if they started between the ages of 16 to 20? How far would they make it in the sport? Looking at the top 15 for heavyweights, I'm certain that just based on athleticism alone, these guys would dust some of the guys in the top 15. And I don't think this is a casual take at all. You're telling me LeBron with training couldn't have competed at heavyweight? Be honest, there are times you've sat down to watch a fight between two heavyweights and just been baffled at what you were witnessing. You've thought to yourself that, hey, if I was the same size as those guys, I could beat them. Be honest, you've thought that. Some of the stuff I've seen is so low level that it's embarrassing. There are heavyweights with no athletic ability and also don't possess the technical ability, and the only reason they're in the UFC is because the UFC is desperate for one of these blobs to be a competent fighter. Sometimes it looks like Dana White just grabbed a guy from Power Slap and threw him in there. This is my reasoning for why the heavyweight division is at an all-time low, especially from the perspective of American MMA. I think the only hope is that some of these guys overtake what kids want to be when they grow up. Because a 10-year-old in America wants to be LeBron, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes more than it wants to be any other UFC fighter. So until that changes, or until we get a case of a Jon Jones sort of athlete who just isn't good enough to go pro in one of those other leagues and somehow picks up MMA, this division may be a lost cause. Because for the division to succeed, multiple guys are needed, not just one. One guy beating up a bunch of blobs won't tell us how good he really is. For massive elite athletes, the UFC is the last option. So until that path looks just as promising as the one for the NFL and the NBA, the heavyweight division will continue to pay the price. Other sports recruit athletes early and offer them scholarships and money that MMA just doesn't. By the time someone ends up in MMA, they're a late starter or somebody who couldn't make it in their first option. It's a backup plan, if even that, for the big explosive athletes. The guys that you want to see fight on Saturdays are scoring touchdowns on Sundays and dropping 30 in the NBA.